Hi, my name is Isabel Hazer, and today I will be presenting on Leishmaniasis. It was found in 1904 in children, and it was found in dogs in 1908 and cultured in the laboratory. In 1912, it was found in mucosal lesions in Brazil, and in 1914, the parasite that caused the different forms were discovered. Genetic specification came much later in the 1970s and 1980s. So Leishmania is caused by, causes the leishmaniasis and is an aerobic parasite. It moves using a singular polar flagella, and it's in the domain Eukaryota, in the kingdom Excavata, in the phylum Glenosa, the class Canadoplastea, the order Trypanostomatida, and the family Trypanosomatidae, and the genus is Leishmania. There are many different species that can cause leishmaniasis, over 20 in fact that can cause leishmaniasis in humans. All species are the same morphologically, but can be distinguished through isoenzyme analysis, molecular methods, and monoclonal antibodies. So there are 4 other parasites in the family. However, none of them are known to cause diseases, especially in humans, but in most animals as well, and only really are parasitic to insects. So Leishmania parasites are transmitted through bites of infective phlebotomine sandflies, which feed on their host infected blood to produce eggs. And there are many different factors that can determine the efficacy of this transmission, such as species, the local environment, current and past exposure, and the human behavior. And it's a natural reservoir in around 70 species, including humans. So the life cycle happens in 8 steps. So the first step is the leishmaniasis is transmitted to humans through the bite, and chromozygotes that reach the puncture wound are phagocytized by macrophages. In the second step, other mononuclear phagocytic cells phagocytize, and chromozygotes transform in these cells into the tissue stage of the parasite. In the third step, these multiply using simple division and proceed to infect other cells. In step 4, the parasite host and other factors become symptomatic, whether any type of the leishmaniasis result from these, including this is where asymptomatic disease can happen as well. In steps 5 and 6, the sandflies become infected using the reverse process of feeding off of an infected host. And in the sandflies, the parasite will be turned into an amizygote and then divide, and the cycle will continue. There are 3 types of leishmaniasis that I'll be talking about today. Cutaneous leishmaniasis is the most common. Visceral leishmaniasis is also known as Kala-Azar, and Mucocutaneous leishmaniasis. So these pictures are a little bit graphic, I'm sorry, but it's what the disease really looks like. Cutaneous leishmaniasis, as I said, is the most common form. It has 600,000 to 1 million new cases annually. As you can see in the picture, it causes skin lesions such as ulcers on exposed parts of the body. These can create lifelong scars and result in serious disability or stigma. About 95% of cutaneous leishmaniasis cases occur in the Americas, not the US, more of South America and Central America, the Mediterranean basin, the Middle East, and Central Asia. In 2018, the 85% of the new cases occurred in only 10 countries. Visceral Leishmaniasis is fatal if left untreated in over 95% of cases, and is one of the top parasitic diseases, in both outbreak and mortality potential. There's 50,000 to 90,000 new cases reported annually. However, it's estimated to make up only 25 to 45% of cases, and it's characterized by irregular bouts of fever, weight loss, enlargement of the spleen and liver, and anemia. The enlargement of the spleen and liver can be observed in the picture on the right, and it's not very subtle. As you can tell, it's fairly visible that it's happening. And an estimated 95% of new cases in 2018 that were reported to the WHO also occurred in only 10 countries: Brazil, China, Ethiopia, India, Iraq, Kenya, Nepal, Somalia, South Sudan, and Sudan. So a few of the countries that also had cutaneous leishmaniasis, but a few other ones as well. And finally, I know this is really hard to look at, but mucocutaneous leishmaniasis. This leads to partial or total destruction of mucous membranes of the nose, mouth, and throat, as you can see on the right. It can be very hard to detect in the early stages, as it's more inward in the respiratory and nasal passages and not outward presenting like it is here. Over 90% occur in much smaller countries fewer number of countries of Bolivia, Brazil, Ethiopia, and Peru. So major risk factors that lead to the getting of this disease include poor socioeconomic conditions, such as poor housing and hygiene, that can lead to more places for the sandflies to live near you, as well as sleeping on the ground increases the risk of getting bitten. Malnutrition, so poor diet, increases the risk of infection. Movement of population into an outbreak area. Environmental changes such as urbanization and movement into a forested area. And climate change, so temperature and rain fluctuations, can impact the amount of sandfly population. So the response is both by the innate and adaptive immune system. The natural killer neutrophils are the first ones to encounter the parasite. Some strains react with neutrophils and suppress them in order to infect the host, and other strains are actually prohibited by neutrophils. So for visceral leishmaniasis, this affects the spleen, liver, mucosa of the small intestine, bone marrow, lymph nodes, and other lymphoid tissues. And absence of lymphocytes actually is one of the hallmarks of the disease progressing. Cutaneous leishmaniasis, lymphocytes and plasma cells are taken over as the disease progresses, and the collagen and elastin are damaged and can lead to fibrosis. So mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, initial nonspecific reaction predominates with infiltration, once again, of lymphocytes, macrophages, and plasmacytes, and this can sometimes be associated with the minor necrotic and granulomatous reactions that you can see earlier in the image. So there are many co-infections that happen along with this disease. One of the main ones is HIV. And so Leishmania HIV co-infected people have a much greater risk of developing the full disease with high relapse and mortality rates. There is a treatment that reduces the development of leishmaniasis, but even then the death rates are very high. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, and dysentery can all be comorbidities. So diagnosis for all three is done through clinical manifestation and parasitological tests. The serological tests are only effective for visceral leishmaniasis and cannot be done for the other two, and therefore rapid testing can be done for visceral leishmaniasis. So there are a few methods of prevention and treatment. However, none of these methods of prevention include a drug, vaccine, or a vaccine. Early detection, sandfly population control, disease monitoring, and local animal control are many of the methods of prevention, as well as educational programs in the signs and symptoms of leishmania in leishmania-prone areas are another effective preventative measure. So in order to have an effective treatment, the exact type of leishmaniasis and the strain of leishmania that caused it both need to be known. Skin sores that are caused will heal on their own, even with no treatment. However, scarring is likely to occur. So symptom treatment is the first step with IVs for dehydration and nutritional supplements to combat any diarrhea that may have occurred. Antimonials are a drug that can be used, such as megluminate, antimonite, and sodium stibogluconate, as well as a few antibiotics such as amphotericin B and paramomycin. So research is being done both in the field and the lab to better treat this and understand it. So in the field, long-term monitoring of patients and sandfly control are both used, and in the lab, development of a vaccine and rapid testing are both in progress. In the future, there is danger of this happening in the United States. It's currently not in the United States very much, and is really mostly considered or is classified as a neglected tropical disease. However, as more people travel to these infected areas, there's a higher risk of people getting them. And in the United States or in other countries, doctors are unfamiliar with the signs and symptoms, which makes it harder to diagnose. And there could be a possible outbreak if more cases emerge. However, right now there is not. Here are my references. Thank you so much.